Welcome to the Crack The MBA Show. My name is Nupur Gupta and I'm your host. Our guest today is Ishani Mukherji, who is part of the full-time MBA class at Tuck School of Business. Ishani completed her BA in economics from Delhi University, after which she worked in e-commerce, retail and consulting at firms like PwC and Etsy in India and Thailand. Hi Ishani, welcome and thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Hi, Nupur. It's completely my pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Ishani, my introduction was so brief. If you could tell our audience a little bit about you, including something which may be lesser known.
Yeah, for sure. I'm basically born and brought up in Delhi, and I went to Delhi University for my undergrad in economics. And currently, I'm a MBA student at the Tuck School of Business. Prior to going to Tuck, I was working at Etsy's India operations for about 2 years. And over there, I was involved in program management roles, strategy and operations, basically building out the business in India. And it was one of my favorite jobs. Prior to that, I spent 3 years in management consulting at PwC. And even before that, I was involved in a few jobs where I was trying to figure out what I really like. So I experimented with a few months at an e-commerce startup. I also worked in Thailand at a grocery conglomerate. And I think all of that really helped me. I think over those 6 years of my work experience, I think I got a really good understanding of what I like, but also what I didn't like. And I think that was something that was really important for me going into my MBA, where you're exposed to so many options. And it helped me, kind of chart out my career path, at least through my first year during my MBA at Tuck.
Ishani, can you talk to us a little bit about why you decided to pursue an MBA in the first place?
So for me, my MBA was kind of a mix of a personal and a professional dream. From the time that I was in my undergrad at Delhi University, I knew that I wanted to study in a multicultural environment, for my further studies, something that I missed at Delhi University a little bit, and I saw my friends elsewhere enjoying. So that was always a personal dream for maybe like 10 years in the making. On the professional side, again, I think once I did my undergrad in economics, which was very academically heavy, I only worked in business. It was not fully connected to what I had studied. And while I learned everything on the job, there were definitely gaps in my knowledge and things that I was just building reactively through working and like gaining some experience on the side through either Coursera, edX, or something like that. But I really wanted to go back to school to more intentionally fill those gaps, as well as focus on things like leadership development, soft skill training, because I always want to work in roles that are involving people and processes. So I think those were few areas that I was looking to develop as I head into my MBA.
Very helpful. Can you speak to us about how you went about figuring out your post-MBA goals, and also if you have any advice for applicants who are trying to figure out their true north?
I think there are two ways to go about it, like figuring out your goals. One is actually like the goals for your essay, one is your real goals. And I do think that they need to be the same, but I think the articulation of them might be a little different. So keeping the essay question aside, I think the way that I figured out my goals is probably not something that I was thinking about just for the purpose of my MBA, but something that I had been thinking about throughout my career journey. And it was a combination of what am I good at and what do I love? Through every job change, I would try to get closer to that answer. And that's why I think I went through so many jobs. But finally, when I was working at Etsy, where I had worked in smaller organizations previously, large organizations, consulting, and now back in industry, I think I really knew like across that spectrum of professional services versus working in-house where I really fit in. And then when I think about from a functional perspective, like marketing operations, finance, I knew what my space was. And for me, it was something which was a combination, which I identified as strategy and operations. So I think identifying the industry and identifying that function was really important for me. And then I thought about, I was, of course, looking at US as the location, and I started thinking about dream companies that I would want to work at, which was fitting the industry preference and the functional preference. And I think that helped me at least define few domains of my goals of what I would be working towards.
Okay, that's helpful. And Ishani, do you also recommend that candidates hold conversations with people who are working in the future industries of their choice?
I think that's the best way that you can figure out whether it is a fit for you or not. I think you can always read about industries and roles, and I think I do recommend that as well. One thing that I highly recommend is reading job descriptions of jobs that you think you might be interested in, like simply on LinkedIn. But then while you're actually connecting with people to understand schools a little bit better, I think also talking to people who are working in an industry that you want to work in, combined with the school that you're applying to, is the perfect mix. So, for example, if you're interested in technology and you're interested at Tuck, I would say reach out to someone who's working at like a Tuck alum working at Google or a Tuck alum working in Uber, so that you can both understand how Tuck fit into their goals as well as what a day-to-day, day in their life looks like at that job, so that you can figure out whether the school really helped them reach their goals and how does that contribute to how they're enjoying their work.
Apart from LinkedIn, looking at those job descriptions, are there any other resources that you would recommend that candidates can consider to help identify and define their goals?
I think another side of it is introspection as well. I think on your experience as well. The thing that I spoke about previously is more forward looking, even introspection on the work that you have done and what is actually going to be achievable is, I think, a really important grounding. So I think that's the bottom up approach that is also really important, because when you're in your MBA and you are trying to either make a career shift or you are trying to, continue in the field that you're working in and trying to get to a different level through the MBA network, I think it's important to understand how do you pitch your story really. So that'll be really different if you are, for example, for me, I worked in tech and I was mostly recruiting in tech. It was a really seamless journey to explain to recruiters, to explain to people I was networking with. So that made a lot of sense for me. However, I was also alternatively looking at another career path, which was I had worked in tech, but I was looking at innovation consulting. So trying to figure out what is it in my past experience that maps to that field, and what are the areas that are growth areas for me, but I plan to take the internship experience to fill those gaps and then continue on that path. So I think that bottom up approach is also really important to figure out whether your goals will be achievable.
That's really helpful. And just to help candidates even more, right? What skills related to innovation consulting were you able to identify in your profile?
I think innovation consulting is all about having a user centric lens on a growth problem for either a nascent startup or it could be like a Fortune 500 company. But that user centric lens is something that's really important. And they have certain methodologies and tools for that, which is things that were completely new to me. However, what mapped well to my experience is that at Etsy, we were trying to develop the minimum viable product that served consumers in India best, because we were thinking of the growth strategy in India. So we were always rooted in consumer research, figuring out what do consumers want, what is already out there, what is not meeting their needs, and where is that white space. So that user lens was already there in my toolkit. However, the way that I approached user research might be a little different and might not have been as informed by best practices in the industry. So I related that to how I understood the space that they work in, how I've done that. But it was also important for me to express that I actually want to get to understand what are the best practices in, developing a user-centric innovation strategy. And that's why I want to work in this field. So I think the need for why you want to enter an industry becomes really clear when actually you have a gap in your experience. So if you look at the gap in your experience as a way to grow and position that as something to a recruiter, it actually makes the why you want to work in the company really clear and really authentic.
Okay, that's really helpful. One follow-up question on that. Could it also raise a red flag around your ability to contribute if you highlight the gap?
I think it could be a red flag based on the extent of gap, but also in the way that you communicate it. So I think definitely is on a case by case basis. In my case, it definitely was not a red flag because I was able to working in that industry, I did spend my summer in innovation consulting. All MBA applicants in the US, MBA students have on an average of 4 years of experience. Be confident about what you have learned and what you have contributed. And the reason that someone's interviewing you is because they appreciate your experience and they think that you could add value to the organization. Definitely don't discount that. So I think in that way, personal brand building is really, really important. That's one thing that I have heard from a lot of people, that Indians usually are looking for way better ways to network, and they might not always be comfortable in talking about their strengths because they might want to be more humble. But I think personal brand building is really, really important and a strong suit to develop as you go through your MBA experience and as you get to know how to network with people and learn from your peers. So I think in that way, there is always something that you can contribute to the company. It's just about how you communicate it during your interview.
All right, very helpful. What would be your, say, two or three tips related to networking for applicants who are applying to MBA programs?
Okay, while applying to MBA programs, I think one is try to reach out to people that you might have something in common with in terms of your experience. And the reason I say that is because when you drop that, one or two liner on LinkedIn, or whether you get their email address from the school's website and drop them an email, if you are upfront able to tell them why you're reaching out to them and not to anyone else, so that your email or message stands out as a non-templatized message, I think that's something really important. Whether they went to the same school, whether you work in the same industry, I can tell you from my experience, whenever people reach out to me, for example, they've worked in one of the big fours, I worked at PwC, and they want to figure out how did I differentiate my experience when I applied for my MBA. Or if someone wants to work in the field that I did my internship in. These are people who, if they reach out to me with this message, I will definitely, definitely make time for them. If the MBA student thinks that they can really help you out because you've already highlighted the commonality in your experience, I think they would take the extra effort to make that time for you. So that's one thing. The second thing is definitely, I would say, instead of reaching out on LinkedIn, some people are active on LinkedIn, some people are not. You can definitely reach out to people on the official email address if you look out for the admissions ambassadors from the website. Students actually have no say in your admission outcome. It is a black box admissions, and I totally understand that. And I think I was confused and I didn't know whether speaking to more students matters, but truly, truly, it's the quality of the conversations that matter. To have those conversations after you've done your due research makes all the difference, so that you can go into those conversations and actually verify information more than ask basic questions is, I think, the thing that's really important. I recently had a conversation with a prospective who had done all of their research. They had all of the names down. I think what they were trying to talk to me about was to understand what they were going to write in their essay was something that Tuck was known for. The website will pitch all of the information to you, but to really figure out what is the school known for, those are things that students can really help you out with, and they can help you steer away from things that are maybe general promotion material versus things that the school is truly famous for. And when you mention that in your essay, the school can identify that you know the school really well because you took the time to research it.
Oh, wow. That's a really great way to look at it. Thanks for sharing that, Ishani. So, moving a little bit more in depth into admissions, right? Can you tell us about your admissions journey?
I think the admissions journey had three parts. The first one is the GMAT, which should be what starts the earliest. The second one is school research, like school selection and school research. And the third one is introspection and essay writing. For me, in terms of weakness, I think professionally, one thing that I identified that could be a perceived weakness, which I wanted to make sure that I position it as my strength, is the number of jobs that I had been in. I had been in 4 jobs in a period of 6 years. And while if someone looked at it at a surface level, it might look like I was confused, I didn't know what I was doing, I couldn't stick to a job. What it meant was that I had very intentionally moved from job to job, enhancing my experience as well as my self awareness. and gaining clarity and skills which were incremental. So I think that was really important to bring out in my, about me or my goals essay and things like that. So that was one thing that could be a perceived weakness, which I wanted to convert into a strength. Another weakness for me definitely was the GMAT. My GMAT score was 720, which is for Indian applicants can be below the average. You will hear different things from different people. Some people will say don't apply below a certain score. Some people will say don't apply to M7 below a certain score. That was something, of course, I did make continuous effort to try to increase my score to something that would make it a non-issue. However, I think 720 did stick as something that added a lot of uncertainty for me. So I had to work on all the other areas to try to bolster my application so that as much as possible, my GMAT becomes a non-issue. The GMAT should be high enough that it's a tick in the box. I think for me, it was something that was a weakness. So it could not be a tick in the box. So I had to work harder on other areas of my application.
For somebody who's grappling with the exact same issue, right? The GMAT's not a tick in the box. How can they showcase their strengths and how can they still manage to get a successful outcome like you did?
So I think there are a few things that you can do. I would start with the recommendations. And I think recommendations is, qualitative way to talk about your experiences, your strengths, your achievements in a way that the applicant really can't. So I think working with your recommenders to make sure that they are aiding what you are talking about in your essay. So talking about those points that you hope that they can elaborate on. Talking about, for example, if your quantitative score in your GMAT is lower, then find examples in your experience that demonstrated quantitative ability and analytical ability, and making sure that your recommenders are able to over index on that if possible. If that was something that they can speak to, that can, I think, go a long way. Another thing is in your resume as well, making sure that analytical examples and achievements in your work shine. So, for example, for me, I had worked in consulting. I had worked on things like, developing investment proposals for a massive, expansion project. So I made sure that I was articulating the number impact of the work that I was doing, the analytical aspect of the projects that I was involved in. So those are few things I think very specifically to say like counter a lower quant score. And I think examples in your essay, I think of course in your essay you're always trying to show the best self, but just keeping in mind what could be a perceived weakness based on your score and then working on your essay and molding it in such a way as well. I think there are some schools that ask about examples in analytical ability. So making sure that you're really tackling those questions much more thoughtfully.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, Ishani. So you were just talking about essays, right? So how did you approach your essays? What was your essay writing process? Do you have any advice for candidates?
Yeah, so I think there are two types of essays. There will almost always be an essay about yourself and your goals. And then there will be an essay about why MBA and why a particular school. And I think those are two areas that, candidate can start working on, even if you don't have essay questions in front of you. Although I definitely recommend working on essay drafts per the school's question, but say you're going through your brainstorming process, I think these are the two topics to brainstorm over. So, in the first one, which is about yourself and your goals, there's almost like a convergence and divergence process. So, I think the divergence process is just laying out all of your anecdotes that you think might be formative to your career decisions, career changes, or anything that is of significance in your professional journey or personal journey. So, I think one is kind of creating that long list. I think that's where I would start for things like, the about you and your goals, short term and long term. And I think then tackling the question based on the prompt of the school is something that you have to use as the convergence process. For a particular school, for example, if they have a 300 word limit, which is what Tuck's essay is about yourself, I think that really gives you the mold to what are the things that you can talk about. Pick up the stories that really weave well into your strengths and your goals, and you highlight those in your essays and your about yourself. In the about the school essay, why you want to pursue your MBA and why a particular school, that's specifically an area that I definitely have a lot of thoughts on because I've learned a lot about it even through my MBA experience. And I think the why MBA and why a particular school are actually two quite different things. And I think when you talk about why a particular school, it's important to aid the points that you mentioned in your why MBA. So, for example, if you've said something like, I want to have a better grasp over financial concepts, or I want to develop leadership skills, you will definitely weave that into your why talk. But it's really important to mention resources at Tuck that Tuck is known for. And that's something that I've learned over time. I'll give you an example. Every school nowadays is positioned for everyone because they're casting a wide net. So there is no school that will say that we are a marketing school or we are a finance school. And that's truly the case. There is, I think, whatever your path is, you can chart your path in a particular school. Schools have ample amount of support. But when you're talking about a particular school, I think it's important to mention the things that the school is really, really known for and that they think that they can deliver best on. So when someone is coming to, if they're applying to Tuck, I would tell them if you have a consulting goal, Tuck is a really, really strong consulting school. You can talk about these three resources at Tuck, which contribute to your consulting goal. However, if you want to talk about innovation, which is something that I was working on, it's not like Tuck is well known for innovation. They will definitely have resources, but if you mention that, I don't think it will demonstrate the best knowledge of the school because it's something that Tuck is working on developing as their go to resource, but they're not there yet. So I think when you research why a particular school, it's important to match that with what are the strengths of the school so that the school understands that this person has done their research and they're coming to the school for the right reasons.
You were talking specifically about the talk essays, right, Ishani? So, do you have any advice for the other essays as well? Talking about who you are as a person, as well as there's an anecdotal essay on a time when you were encouraging.
Yeah. So I think in who you are as a person, I think Tuck has four admission criterias which are listed on their, on the blog. You can demonstrate a fit with those criteria through multiple ways, which are not necessarily in the essay. For example, something like smart and accomplished, which are two of the criterias. Actually, your recommendation and your CV or your resume contribute more to that. When you come to the who you are, I think it's important to understand which of the criterias might have been not elaborated on enough through the rest of your material and picking up that strand and coming up with, I would recommend a maximum of 2 to 3 anecdotes to demonstrate certain criteria that you're going to talk about because it's just a 300-word essay. It's not supposed to be a laundry list, but it's actually supposed to give a peek into the person that you are in a little bit of detail. And in 300 words, I think it's very difficult to do justice to more than 2 or 3 anecdotes. For my essay, I think I only talked about 2 anecdotes, like 2 paragraphs, 2 anecdotes that went into enough detail so that there's some color around what I'm saying I'm known for. And I think the last essay, the one which is the anecdote of when you did something which is empathetic or encouraging, however, while it was not convenient for you, is a really interesting essay. I think that essay reveals so much about Tuck to me. And I truly think it shows Tuck's fabric in a way that once you get admitted, you realize is so applicable. Because I think in your Tuck experience, you will definitely have anecdotes of when you've done these things when it's not convenient. So I think it's a really telling essay. And I would not miss out on the nuance of something which is encouraging or empathetic when it's not convenient. I think I've heard of a lot of people who talk about something which is, shows that they are really empathetic, but it doesn't really highlight what was the personal trade-off that they had during that particular event. So I think it's important to articulate that and not shy away from talking about how something might have been inconvenient for you, either professionally or personally, and was definitely something that you were grappling with. And it's something where you can show your vulnerability, you can show your emotions in that essay, and it's something that hopefully candidates will not shy away from.
Yeah, I think that's one which sometimes people struggle with, specifically as the part which talks about when it's not convenient. And they really, really, really have to dig deep at times. Shani, can you talk a little bit about the interview? How can applicants excel in the talk interview? What traits would they get evaluated on?
I think in the talk interview, it's a really, really friendly interview process. That's one thing I would say. I experienced that, and I think it has commonly been experienced across candidates that I've spoken to and my friends now at Tuck. I think few things that are really important to focus on when you're going through your Tuck interview is passion for the school, for sure. I believe it's the smallest class size in the top 20 MBAs, and people are definitely filtering for a cultural fit during the interview. I'm speaking about this from personal experience. There are many ways you can show cultural fit, but I think one way is, would you fit into the location and the setting of Hanover and Dartmouth? It is probably the only school that I've heard of in the top 20 MBAs which does not have Uber available in the city. So that's just one example of how that town is really, really unique. So understanding what some people might perceive as the limitations of the town or could be inconveniences, understanding what it means for you and talking about why you want to go to TAR, not despite the location, but because of the location is, I think, something that's really important, because I can imagine certain people not wanting to do their MBA in a place that's as remote. However, if that's something that affects your decision and if it comes out in the interview, I think it's definitely something the interviewer will pick up on. When someone's thinking about Tuck, they think about that. To me, it's one of the biggest strengths of the Tuck MBA experience, but it's really important to think about whether you would fit into that location. And once you figure out that fit, being able to communicate that is really important in the interview. The other thing is, you cannot be invisible at Tuck. Everyone has high amount of visibility to other students, to the administration, to the professors, which means that you need to be ready to contribute to the community. It's very difficult to lay low in the Tuck community. So active participation is something that is really important to the Tuck student community. So I think that would be something that would be important to demonstrate. Your willingness to get involved in student life, student activities is something that would be important to demonstrate in the interview process. And I think the last thing is mapping out your career goals to the resources at Tuck. Tuck has very specific resources for certain industry and functional preferences, and being able to map them out, whether they are in the experiential resources, whether they are in the 6 centers across Tuck, whether it is a particular career club, whether it is a particular course. Tuck is very, very intentional about mapping all of these resources back to a career goal. So being able to have a cross section of these, not just academic resources, but a cross section of academic and experiential resources mapping back to your career goals would be important and would show that you understand what Tuck has to offer.
So my next question is, what for you is the unique identity of Tuck's MBA program? And you talked about the location, the class size. So how is that for you a virtue and something that makes the program so enjoyable?
On the social aspect, I think the way that it shows up is it is an immersive experience. Everyone will say that when they talk about the Tuck experience, but the reason for that is that no one is from Hanover, right? No one has actually lived in Hanover. Maybe one, I think I've heard of one student because, they are the daughter of a professor that they actually lived in Hanover before, but majority, everyone has moved to Hanover for Tuck, which means that everyone has left their comfort zone, which is an equalizer and a bonding experience. And I highlight that as a really important thing, especially for international students. You can imagine when an international student goes to a city campus, where a lot of their classmates have already lived in the city or already have a lot of peers in the city, an international student might be new to the city, there is a little bit of a difference in the experience that they might have. However, in a school like Tuck and other, rural campuses, everyone has moved to that place just for the Tuck experience, which means that 100% of the people are 100% committed to the Tuck experience, and there is no other distraction, which makes for a really, really rich and fulfilling experience for all students. The other thing is that the small class size, I think, is a huge asset in every way possible, whether it is for leadership opportunities. There are more number of positions and posts, and there are fewer people competing for it. So everyone can get a chance to have a leadership position in a small or a big way. And I think it's a huge opportunity for people who might be a little scared of doing something new. You can actually do something really new, and you don't have to be afraid of failure, because there is just so much opportunity to go around for the few number of students that are there in the school. The other thing is, from a career perspective, you have so much support from the administration, the career services team, the faculty. I think Tuck has the best ratio in terms of administration to student as well as faculty to student, that no matter what your career goals are and possibly how unconventional they are or conventional they are, if you need additional support, you will get it immediately, and you will get an abundance of it, so much so that you might not know what to do with it. I can speak from personal experience. I did somewhat of unconventional recruiting. I did tech, but I also did retail. We don't have a specific track for retail, or we don't have a retail club. And I did innovation consulting. So one, I was doing 3 industries which had little overlap, but also I was, recruiting in companies where few internationals had previously maybe recruited in, and I couldn't find a lot of internationals who had similar experiences. But I was always able to find a person, whether it was in the alum or whether it was a career service member, who could find me the resource and give me the practice that I needed in what could seemingly be like a new space to explore. So I think those are ways that both the location and the class size and the ratio with faculty and administration is really, really amazing at Tuck.
Shani, can you speak about the major events or experiences that students look forward to participating in at Tuck?
Yeah, for sure. So I think on the social side, I would say the biggest event at Tuck is the Tuck Winter Carnival. It is something which is a cross-school event that we have at the end of February, just towards the end of the ski season, where previously in 2021, or 2022 now, 1,000 attendees were there. We were doing the Tuck Winter Carnival after a 3-year gap because of COVID. And it is one of the greatest cross-school collaboration for a social event that I have known of. It takes place on the ski slopes. It is, I think, a 2-day event which has morning activities related to skiing, races, and a lot of social programming. And then towards night, there are themed parties. The event actually took place on a ski mountain, and previously it's taken place on the runway of the small airport that we have in Lebanon, New Hampshire. So it's a really unique event that Tuck is really, really proud to host. There is a leadership committee for it, but almost all of the Tuck community gets involved in that. You will hear professors talk about it in the days leading up to the Tuck Winter Carnival, about how they are also gearing up for it. So the entire community really comes together for that. Another one that I personally love because I was involved in it last year was Tuck Gives Gala. It's basically a fund where we raise funds for students who are going to be pursuing internships in the social impact space, which might not either have partial pay or might be pro bono, but to support them in pursuing internships in those spaces, we raise funds for that. And there is a auction leading up to a 1-day gala where the items that are auctioned out are really showing the fabric of Tuck and the love that the Hanover and Tuck community has for the students. So you will have professors hosting a 10-person pool party and a barbecue. These are traditions that have been happening for 20 years. Or a professor who will, donate their time and host a hike. Admissions would host a hike, a 3-hour hike with 6 students. So those are things that really bring the Tuck community together as well as support students to pursue their passions. And it's something that the Tuck community really loves to get together for.
Very cool. Okay, and moving to academics, Ishani, Who are the star professors and what are the must-do courses at Tuck?
Oh, there are so many that come to mind, but I think top of mind, a few courses that I'm really looking forward to in the coming term. There is a course called Ecosystem Strategy by Professor Rod Adner, which students really love, and I'm looking forward to that. I haven't taken that yet. I also loved our strategy core actually, which is taught by two professors, Professor Gavetti and Professor Ramon. They have their own approach to frameworks that they've developed for strategy. So we don't actually use any public readings for that, but it's actually course material that has been developed by the professors and drawing upon case studies that they revise every year. So that's like a core course that really stands out to me. Another course that I love is Digital Change Strategy. It's by Professor Alva Taylor. He's kind of leading all courses in digital change and innovation and design thinking. So the digital change strategy course is all about how legacy industries are impacted by change in technology and digitization and how they respond to it. And we do really interesting courses like cases to, understand that and apply that to our work.
Okay, very cool. Can you speak a little bit about the housing situation at Tuck? I'm guessing everyone stays on campus. If you could just speak a little bit about that.
In the first year, students who come without partners, they have the option for signing up for on-campus housing, which is basically in 3 dorms, which are basically our school campus. So our dorms are on the first floor to like the fourth floor, and in the ground floor and underground of that is basically where the classes take place. So it's truly residential, and these are like 1 bedroom dorms with ensuite bathrooms, and it makes for a really, really amazing living community where probably for the first and last time you will be living around 150 of your peers, and you see them as soon as you wake up, and you'll see them till the time that you head to bed. That's in the first year. It is open for people who want to live on a single occupancy basis. Another housing option is called Sachem, which is like a gated community for people who are coming in with their partners and their kids and their dogs. Also, a very self contained community where everyone's living close to each other. So those are kind of the two big pockets of living in the first year. In the second year, people who live in Sachem, they of course continue to live in those housing, but students who would be living in the dorms do have to move out and make space for the incoming first years. In the second year, there is a lot of tuck houses, both in Hanover, New Hampshire, as well as Norwich, Vermont. And these are houses that are passed down from, different tuck classes, and they have names which are continued as tradition. And there are cases where you actually have to pitch to the occupants of the tuck house with a presentation of why you deserve to live in that house. And if you're able to entertain them well enough, then they will name you the next occupant. So there are all kinds of traditions in the way that tuck houses are passed down from year to year. It's a really vibrant community wherever you live, whether it's in the dorms, whether it's off campus, whether it's in Sachem.
Ishani, can you talk a little bit about what student life is like? How do students engage outside the classroom?
We live in the middle of the woods. So a lot of our activities are around the setting that Hanover is in. So based on the season, that differs. So like in the summer, place that students love to get together is the river. So the Tuck campus is right next to the Connecticut River. So there is a lot of paddle boarding, there is canoeing, kayaking, just going into the river for swimming. In fall, which is the most beautiful time at Tuck, there is a lot of leaf peeping. So there is hikes that people go on to see the best colors of the upper valley. There is apple picking and all of these kind of activities which dominate the fall weather. In the winter, it is fully consumed by skiing. Tuck has a huge interest for skiing. Very often people would plan their classes around the ski season. I have not skied, so I would not be the best person to speak about that, but I might be one of maybe 20 people on campus who have not skied. So if anyone's interested in skiing, I'm pretty sure they would anyway be frequenting Killington, and that's basically the backyard of Tuck. So these are few of the outdoor activities that dominate our life. But otherwise, the Tuck social calendar is something that our social chairs of the student government plan, and it is something that has maximum attendance. So the way that our social chairs plan our social calendar is that there are very few conflicting events. which means that on any day, it gives an opportunity for the entire Tuck community to get together at the calendarized event, which people will know about for weeks in advance. And almost everything on the calendar is sort of a tradition. There might be new events year on year, but most of these events are events that you've heard about, alums talk about for the last 15, 20 years. So it's amazing to keep some of those traditions alive, whether they are social activities, whether they are things around career, academics, but there's a lot of tradition around the
Can you
activities in the
talk about
calendar.
one or two examples of what those events look like so we can picture it better?
Yeah, one of the social events is called the Luau, which is the almost first social event that happens on the calendar when both the first and second years are on campus. It is hosted in one of the Tuck houses, which is off campus in Norwich, Vermont. And imagine about 4 acres of wilderness and like a wooden cabin in the middle, and they are hosting like a sundowner party for everyone, and you're actually transported to the location and back from the location in, believe it or not, school buses, which Tuck students love to hate, but that's the only mode of transport sometimes. So that's like luau is a big tradition. Then something which was new this time was a silent disco. So we have another beautiful Tuck house called the Skybox, which is like a wooden cabin but upgraded. So imagine like a lot of skylights. So which is why what it gets its name for. And there was a silent disco. So like no loud music, but everyone had headsets with different colored lights, and just you came in and enjoyed that. And that's a new event which the social chairs are really excited to make a tradition so that the future classes can carry that forward.
Okay, that's helpful. And so, are you having events like every week, or what's the general frequency?
There would be an event almost every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So very rarely would there be no tuck wide event on every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And these events will be either, sponsored by a certain affinity club, like say the wine club or the beer club or Asia Business Club, which can be around the Chinese New Year, or it can be the South Asian Business Club and they will be hosting Diwali, or it will be like one of those school-wide traditions like the Luau party, which is just planned and hosted by the social chairs. So every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there would definitely be like a school-wide event, but through the week as well, there would be like smaller community events like small group dinners, which is something that is sort of a quarterly tradition where the entire school is broken up into groups of 5 to 6 people. And these are across first years and second years. And there are hosts who are, hosting dinner either in their houses, or people even in the dorms can do it, and they can do it in the common kitchen. So every quarter there's a day allocated for that, and the entire community breaks out into small groups, and then they get to meet new people.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks, Ishani. What do you wish prospective students knew about TAC?
I wish prospective students knew that there is no Uber in Hanover.
How do you commute?
Almost everyone has a car in Hanover, and people who don't have a car, the Tuck community is extremely helpful. And one of the most common messages that you'll see on our social channel is, I'm going to this grocery store and I have 3 empty spots in my car. Would anyone like to come? Or the other way around, someone will post that they need to go somewhere. I have never heard of someone who's asked for a ride and not gotten one, but eventually everyone tries to get a car. We have a really interesting tradition. I wouldn't call it a tradition, but it's like a club actually called Safe Rides. It is Tuck's answer to late night Ubers, and there is a roster of students from Wednesday to Saturday, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. At least two of your classmates will be running an Uber service with their own personal car, and there is an
Wow.
app for it where people will send in their requests, and then the two people who are on duty will be fielding the requests and will go and pick up people and drop there to their location. So
That's
there are really
incredible.
unique solutions, community driven solutions to all the inconvenience that come with life in the Upper Valley.
Amazing. What's been your biggest challenge at TAC?
I think transportation is a little bit of a challenge just because Coming from a city, I live in Delhi where public transport is really good. I would never have to think twice about how I'm going from point A to point B. It sometimes can be a challenge in Hanover, especially if you are slightly introverted and you don't feel like you want to ask for help. I would just urge everyone to ask for help, because the first time you do that and you have success with it, you'll feel much more comfortable doing that. At Tux specifically, I actually won't say that I have had any challenges from a career perspective. While I was recruiting for things where I might not have had a lot of examples, there's so much support in the community and within the administration that anything that could have been a challenge really became a moment for the community to come through. There are just minor things about life in the Upper Valley which can be challenging, but other than that, I would not say much. I know some people would quote the temperature as a massive challenge. It did get to minus 28 degrees more than one day, but it's somehow beautiful. That's just my perspective. I think it might be the novelty of it, but I was seeing snow for the first time and it was absolutely stunning and I loved it.
Amazing, amazing. So, Ishani, can you tell us about your involvement in extracurricular activities? You spoke about Tuck Gives already, and I believe you're co-chairing that this coming year. If you could talk about the other activities, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I loved in terms of my extracurricular involvement is Tuck has amazing centers. They have these 6 centers which are related to career exploration and academic topics. They are around private equity and venture capital. There is one around entrepreneurship. There is one around digital strategy, healthcare, and one is around energy. And I think I'm forgetting the last one. These are all centers that have deep expertise in the field that they are operating in. So I was involved in the Center for Digital Strategy, which has an associate program for the first years and a fellowship program for the second year. Every center has its own programming, whether it's a fellowship or whether it is a different way to get involved, whether it is a particular class or an experiential program, which is shorter than a full year fellowship. But I was involved in the associate position for the Center for Digital Strategy. The Center for Digital Strategy pertains to all topics related to technology and digitization, and it really cuts across industries. So the associate position had about, I would say, 20 to 30 students. There is an application process for it, about 7 to 8 questions that you answer, and you get together with your cohort of about the 20 to 30 students. There is a thought starter and there is a discussion for about an hour to 2 hours on that topic in a very structured way. So that structure might change from week to week, but there would be questions like, what is the future of the metaverse? Or there would be things like, how is digitization changing legacy industries, things that we cover in certain classes of ours as well. We might talk about a particular industry like autonomous vehicles, or the next week we might talk about health tech. So it's really about technology touching different industries. And we sometimes have guest speakers come in who are alums or people known to our professors. For example, we have the professor who is the academic chair for the Center for Digital Strategy is Professor Alva Taylor, who has done a lot of research in the area of innovation, design thinking, and digitization. So he will know, for example, the chief digital officer of Mars, who will come in and speak to us about how they are implementing design thinking methodology in innovation in-house. It's really to expand your understanding of technology, which is, I think that's something that's really important, because technology is no longer like just about software and it touches so many industries. So I think it's a really interesting center where you can gain a broader understanding of changes in this industry. So that has been one of my involvements. The other one, like on the social side, one that I love is the small group dinners. I think I spoke about the tradition a little bit, which is like once a quarter, the community gets divided into groups of 5. You get to meet people from across the batches, and the effort is to get people together who might not know each other and who might not have a lot of overlap. So it's something that I really enjoyed in my first year, and I got to meet a lot of people outside of my closest friends and got to develop some amazing bonds and meet people from different backgrounds. So that's something that I'm really excited to co-chair going into the second year.
Very cool. That's awesome. Ishani, are there trips, student trips, that are also part of the TAC experience? If there are any major such activities and experiential learning opportunities, maybe you could touch upon that as well.
So we have something called the Global Insights Expedition. Again, something that's been halted for about 2 years now, but it's coming back this year. It primarily takes place in the final term of our second year, so it's the spring term around March. We just got the programming for it. The idea is that it could be about a cohort of 25 students in their second year going to one of the countries from the list. This time we have countries like Sweden, Norway, UAE, Israel, Brazil, Chile, Peru, we have Vietnam. Each country will have a topic that will be explored through the programming for a period of about 7 to 9 days. And there will be a faculty advisor who will be accompanying the 25 students on the trip. I can speak about the one that I'm looking forward to. It's in Denmark. It's basically exploring the Danish model. Why is it that Denmark ranks so highly in the happiness index? How is it that the government is able to provide social services free of cost? How does that match up with the taxation system? So it's really a look at the social, political, economic model of a country, specifically in the case of Denmark. But that's kind of the lens that is applied to almost each of the GIXs that are there. Israel one is about entrepreneurship and innovation. Sweden is about the gender model. UAE is about energy and cleaner energy resources. So every country has a particular topic, and you spend, I believe, about 2 weeks before you head to the particular country in the classroom with the faculty advisor, doing pre-reads, preparing yourself for the trip. And then when you're in the location, you are meeting businesses, people from the government, locals, and really having a deep dive into the social and economic model of the country.
Okay. And what led you to pick the Danish trip?
Partly scheduling, but mostly from the options that I had. I was really curious to know why countries like Norway, Sweden, a lot of Scandinavian countries rank really high in the happiness index. And that's something that I'm curious about. And you read a lot about that. What is a better way to understand that in depth than visit the country with this particular lens? You can visit it as a tourist, but when you visit the country through some of this programming, you get access to communities that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. For example, currently the US ambassador to Denmark is an alum from TUC. So that gives us additional access to, insights about even diplomatic relations with the countries that would, of course, be impossible to have when you visited just as a tourist. So few of those things, are really interesting about this GIX in specific. And there's an option to do it in the winter this time in December. And I've heard that Denmark has great traditions around Christmas. So that's also something I'm really excited to experience.
And Ishani would also like to talk about recruiting and careers a little bit. For international students, consulting and tech are the two big opportunities, right? Could you briefly speak about the opportunities for each of these career paths that students at TAC can avail?
In consulting, one of the strongest resources is the program that's run by the consulting club. They run a mentorship program. Second years who have successfully, completed their internships in consulting would sign up to be mentors, and they would be assigned a cohort of about 4 to 5 first-year students who are interested in consulting. And there is 4-week programming that is designed to onboard them into the process. And each of those weeks, covers things like how do you network for consulting, and then, going into the process of casing. Week on week, you will actually complete a guided process of a case with your mentor as a group. And then from the 5th week onwards, you will start actively the process of casing. And consulting club kind of runs a process for that, where all of the mentors who signed up to run these groups, along with anyone else who has worked in consulting in their summer, will volunteer their time and particular slots. Also mention which cases are they open to taking with the first years, and then the first years will sign up for the slot. And there is a given time every week that there will be sign-ups that will be open. So it's very transparent, it's very democratic, and people always have resources, through the consulting club. This is kind of the starting point for the first years. I think other than this, The career service team itself also runs weekly case prep, sessions for students. So between these two, what I've heard is, I didn't do recruiting in consulting, but what I've heard is that there is more than enough practice for people who are going into consulting interviews. So that's for consulting. And in tech, there are very different preparations for the different roles that people are pursuing. So the first thing that the career service team does is help differentiate those different branches of prep for tech. So whether it is more product related, or whether it's going to be finance related, or whether it's going to be strategy and operations related. I think broadly these are the three areas. And then there is different prep for that. So some of them are static resources which are made available by both the tech club as well as the tech career service advisor that people can use to self-serve. And these are, books on thousands of questions on strategy and operations, prompts when they are interviewing at tech, divided by industry. Or there might be, more than 1,000 questions on product interviews, which people can use to self-serve, as well as, schedule time with their peers, and then, have a peer ask you some of the questions that you have highlighted. The other really helpful resources is that our career service advisor runs weekly tech case interview sessions. Sorry, it's daily case interview sessions, tech case interview sessions. So every day you can sign up, and in a group of maximum 3 to 4, the career advisor will give you a tech case interview prompt. And then, for the next hour, in a sequential way, you will solve it with the group. People sign up for it again and again, and they sometimes even sign up for the same prompt to just attack it in different ways, because the cohort might be different and you might learn something different from it. I would say tech is a little bit more of an entrepreneurial process. And by entrepreneurial, I mean it's more of what you make of it, whereas consulting is a little bit more structured and guided, just because the interview process is a little bit more predictable and there is a lot more historical evidence in consulting, whereas in tech, it will differ by the sub-industry that you're interviewing for, role that you're interviewing for, company that you're interviewing for. So the idea is to build general intuition through some of these resources, but when you come to prepare for a certain company, you work one-on-one with your career advisor and prepare for that particular interview.
Super helpful. Thanks, Ishani. We hear a lot about nice students at TAC, right? Like really, really nice community members. Would you be able to share an anecdote of how you've experienced that?
The DMV, I'm forgetting the full form of it.
Department of Motor Vehicles.
Motor Vehicles. Basically, the closest office for any official work from Hanover is 2 hours away. So, for example, when I had to go and get my social security card, or say I need to get my state ID, or I need to get my driver's license, I need to go 2 hours away, and there is no public transport. TUC does support you. So if you have like a quorum of about 4 people, which is not difficult to get, TUC will send you, will organize a van for you. However, there are just times when that might not be possible. So there is a second year who, a person just needed to go to the office to get their state ID because they were leaving the country and they don't want to be carrying their passport around. It's a real risk for all the international students. Your passport is your only form of ID till you get your state ID or license. So it was really critical for this person before they left Hanover for the summer to get their state ID. And they just put like a message on the group with no expectation of someone to take out 5 hours out of their day to drive them to the office to get their state ID. But I think in less than 2 minutes, they put this message, in less than 2 minutes, someone replied. And this was the second year, who said that, yeah, I'll take you. I went along with them just because so that I could give them more company on the, car ride, because when the person actually went in to get their state ID, that's a 1 hour long process. That peer of ours in the second year, they would just be waiting in the car. I was truly blown away by the fact that someone would take out 5 hours in their day to do something like this. And this is not even uncommon. This happens all the time. People will just spend several hours to go and pick up someone's car because it's like stuck somewhere 2 hours away. It's just like a general part of life. You are wired to be there for each other because sometimes it's just out of the niceness of your heart, but you know that this is the community that's going to be there for you when you also might need them just tomorrow. And that's just the kind of place that we live in. We are all we have. So people really, really show up for each other.
Very cool. Amazing, amazing. What's the food situation like? Do you guys go out to eat? Are there some really popular places to eat out? If you could share a little bit.
Food is a touchy topic at Tuck. If my peers hear me, they would be not very happy. I'm totally happy with the food at Tuck. So there are a few options. For Tuck students, we have our dining hall is called Burn. It's open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. However, it does shut down at 7:30. What it means is there are no late night snacks in Hanover. There is one and only one late night snack option in Hanover, which is Domino's. That's the one which is open till 4 a.m. But otherwise, on campus eating options is the Tuck Dining Hall and then the undergrad dining hall. There are two which are open for longer. But again, like there's no late night eating option. So there are two undergrad dining halls, one graduate dining hall, and that takes care of the campus provided eating opportunities. Outside of that, like in the town of Hanover, there are about, I would say, 10 to 12 restaurants. A lot of them are only open till lunch or 6 p.m. because they are cafe formats. There would be about 5 of them, I would say, which are open like till dinner, like till 11 p.m. and maybe 1 or 2 which are more like a bar format and hence are open till a little bit later. Domino's is open till 4 a.m. I'm waiting to go back to Hanover. I'm right now in India to figure out if there are any more companies that have picked up on the opportunity of late night snacks and kind of exploiting that business. But till then, that's all we have.
Can people cook in the dorms?
Yes, there are 3 dorms. One of them has a very, very good cooking facility. It's called Ochtmeyer and PV. It's like two sides of the same dorm. They have good cooking facilities. There's another dorm called Whitmore. There is cooking facilities, but it's less utilized. I think it's more because it's an industrial style kitchen. The last dorm, which is called Buchanan, the kind of executive dorms are much larger. However, they don't have any kitchen facilities.
And these are common kitchens, is it? Like
Yes.
One for the whole dorm.
So in PV and Ochtmeyer, the one kitchen is for the whole floor. So there are 3 floors.
And so do you have to schedule your cooking arrangements? Okay.
You don't have to schedule. Just the way that it works is that it's not very busy. There is no scheduling system. It's purely based on mutual understanding.
Okay, super. That's really helpful. Thanks, Ishani. And are there any bars? Because you were talking about like 2 a.m. runs for the safe ride, right? So are there bars as well?
There are about 3 to 4 bars which are there. 2 of them run till really late. I think one of them is more of a dinner restaurant bar. So Murphy's is where you will find all Tuckies almost every night of the week, definitely on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. It's an amazing bar. It's kind of like an Irish bar style. Behind the bar are placards for every Tuck class. So like you'll see like a Tuck 2013, Tuck 2011, Tuck 2021. So, like all the placards are there. So it's kind of a Tuck bar while it is, of course, open to the entire Dartmouth community. There is like one more sports bar called Dunks. Some people love it, some people hate it, but it's there. And there are a few more that keep coming up a few times. I have to say that Tuck is in Hanover. However, there are 2 close by towns, like less than 10 minutes drive or like 15-minute drive, called White River Junction and Lebanon. And those also have a lot of options. So while whatever is in Hanover is in walking distance, the other things are like a car ride away. But the reason I said like safe rides runs till 2 a.m. is because most of the social activities at Tuck happen either on campus. Like, on campus, we have 2 common areas which are converted every Thursday to Saturday night for a social event. So it's really convenient for people who live in the dorms. Like the social activity or like the party will be on the ground floor and they live on the 2nd, 3rd floor, or they will be in the Tuck houses, which are all off campus. So like the safe rides are actually running between those Tuck houses and where people live, which could either be another Tuck house or the campus. So it's kind of distributed between Tuck houses and the campus.
Understood. Any final thoughts on how incoming students can be better prepared to hit the ground running and succeed at Tuck?
The thing that I would recommend when people come into Tuck is prioritizing. I think this is common to all business schools, but I can say that it applies to Tuck as well. Like prioritizing the things that you're going to be involved in, because you don't have to try out a ton of things to see which one you get an opportunity with. Because as I said, if you want to do something at Tuck, you can 100% do it. You might think that I might not want to run for student government because I've never had a leadership position at that level. If you are running for the first time, you can have that position at Tuck because there are so many opportunities going around for people. So if something looks interesting, think of it as something that is very, very achievable. Just make up your mind if you want to try for that, because if you try for that, chances are that you will get that opportunity. And the other thing is Tuck has the greatest alumni connections. You will never find a Tuck alum that you reach out to who would not respond to you. So if you see someone who's working in a company that you're interested in, just the fact that you go to Tuck will be enough to get an immediate response from them, and use that really, really frequently. I would especially recommend that as something that international students prepare for, because that's something that's going to be your greatest asset. I know that I felt it myself, that coming from India, I feel like people are not used to like cold approaches and reaching out to people. If that is you, like find whatever the quickest way is to overcome that, because you'll be missing out on one of the greatest strengths of Tuck, which is the Tuck alumni.
Awesome. With that, thank you so much, Ishani, for sharing such lovely insights. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and speaking with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nipur.